Hello and welcome to the podcast. This is Ron's Amazing Stories. We have stories that should thrill you a little and chill you a little.
It's amazing.
You will hear adventures sent in by you guys, classic stories from the pulp mags, and episodes from the golden age of radio. We have special segments like Ghost Stories with Sylvia.
That's amazing.
And the Paranormal with Jason.
I think we're going to have a lot of fun.
So settle in for the next hour and enjoy the show. Oh, and you just might want to prepare yourself to be taken away from today.
Another 5-minute mystery.
This 5-minute mystery is being brought to you by The Western. P.K. Vanderkast had this to say. The Wild West didn't have much in the way of forensics. When you saw a bullet hole, you'd say, that's probably what killed him. Here is our story.
Hello?
Hello, Coroner. This is Sheriff Slade.
Oh, yes, Sheriff. What can I do for you?
Seems there's been some excitement out at the ex-Bar Dude Ranch. One of them dude vacations is dead as a coyote.
Okay, Sheriff. I'll meet you out there in about a half an hour.
Right?
Well, here's the sheriff now. Hiya, Sheriff.
Howdy, Dan. Having some trouble out here?
Yeah, I reckon it's not going to be any too good for my business either. One of the guests up and got herself killed.
Where's the body, Dan?
All right in the house here. Fella named Vaughn Calder. That's her husband. He's inside with her. Oh. Hey, it's howdy, Mr. Calder. It's Sheriff Slade in the corner.
How do you do, gentlemen?
Hate to bother you like this, Mr. Calder. We'll just have to ask a couple of questions.
Go right ahead, Sheriff. I'm rather broken up, but I'll try to be of some help.
Vaughn, I just heard. I'm so terribly sorry. But maybe it's for the... Oh, I didn't know that.
That's all right, Nora. This is Sheriff Slade in the coroner. This is Nora Bradley, gentlemen.
Any relation to you, Mr. Calder?
Why, no, we're going to be married, that's all.
Then I reckon you and your wife weren't hitting it off so well.
There's no use my hiding anything. We weren't hitting it off. She'd known about Nora and me for some time now. I'd asked her a dozen times for a divorce. She wouldn't give it to me. But I wouldn't have had anything like this happen. I didn't hate her.
How did she die, Mr. Calder?
She was bitten by a rattlesnake. You can see the little hole in her arm.
Will you take a look at the body, Coroner?
Sure.
Go on, Mr. Calder.
We were out riding this morning. We'd gotten off the horses to rest for a while. I had my back turned to her for a few moments as I tied the horses to a tree. I heard her scream. I turned around, and there was a large rattlesnake a few feet away from her, poised to strike. I saw the fangs shoot out from its mouth and plunge into her arm. It was horrible.
Then what happened?
Well, we were only 10 minutes from the ranch. I got her back here as fast as I could. She was dead when I arrived.
What's your report, Coroner?
Everything's as he says, Sheriff. Small puncture in the left forearm, accompanied by large swelling of the surrounding tissue. She died of rattlesnake poison, all right.
But not by a rattlesnake.
I don't get you, Sheriff.
You've had a murder on your ranch. Vaughn Calder murdered his wife.
Have you found the clues that led the sheriff to accuse Vaughn Calder of murder? The solution in a moment. But first...
So Calder murdered his wife, and the sheriff knows why. It seems cut and dry, but there's one thing that doesn't add up. If you take the number 1 and multiply it by 2, then you have part of our answer. But you really have to stop and ask yourself just how many holes were there versus how many there should be? Food for thought. Now, did I go too far with this? Or did the snake just miss his mark?
And now, back to our story.
What are you trying to do? The coroner just told you she died of rattlesnake poison.
There's no doubt about that, Calder. But it weren't administered by a rattlesnake. You injected poisonous venom into your wife's arm with a hypodermic needle, then watched her die a slow, painful death. And like most people, you don't know much about snakes, Calder. That evil-looking thing that the snake shoots from its mouth is not a fang. That's just the tongue. Every snake has that, poisonous or non-poisonous. But the real fangs, and I said fangs, plural, are 2 long teeth in the forward part of the mouth, which are never seen. If she'd been bitten by a real rattler, she'd have 2 punctures instead of 1.
There you have a lesson in snake anatomy. They have 2 fangs, not just 1. Who knew? Well, I knew. This 5-minute mystery was not only brought to you by the Western, but also by Swoof, which is a foundation for snakes with only 1 fang. Welcome to the podcast. It is Western Week, and all our stories have a Western feel, including the 5-minute mystery. If you noticed that.
Did you? I didn't notice.
Well, you should have. Listener Gary Richard asked me to revisit a story from years ago called Stampede Messa. No worries, it's just a story. Then we head to Fort Laramie to hear Captain Quince's encounter with Yellow Horse at an officer's ball.
That doesn't make sense.
It will. There are some big changes coming to Ron's Amazing Stories this Friday. I told you a few weeks ago that I would be posting a blog version of These Are Your Stories. That begins this Friday. But there is more to this than I originally stated, hence the delay. While this is starting his blog post for now, plans are in the work for a brand new podcast by the same name. This will be a live call-in show. I will host it, and you will call in with your stories. I'm working on the logistics and will be doing some test runs, which will be posted as blogs for now. Once we are stable, we just might have a brand new podcast called RAS, These Are Your Stories. What I'm looking for right now are folks who would like to be part of the testing process. If you want to be a guinea pig, let me know by heading to the main website and using the Contact tab. All manner of stories are welcome, so please consider taking part in the testing events. You have until Sunday night, November 15th, to get your answers in for Sylvia Schultz's annual 2020 Halloween contest. She challenged us to complete her story, which took place at the Heathman Hotel in Portland, Oregon. Strange happenings have taken place in rooms 303, 703, and 1003. Your job is to tell us what the connection is with those rooms. To enter, you can email ronsamazingstories@gmail.com or use the Contact tab on our homepage. The winners will receive a copy of Sylvia Schultz's new book, Days of the Dead, A Year of True Ghost Stories. Remember, your entry must be received by November 15th. Our main website is ronsamazingstories.com. Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook and a 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/Ron'sAmazingStories. They have over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, computer, Kindle. Whatever you have, you can listen to Audible on it. So what am I listening to right now? Dead Ringer, a Western trio by Louis Lamar, narrated by Lloyd James. Now I know what a lot of you are thinking. A Western? Come on now.
That is what I was thinking.
Well, put those thoughts away and know that this is a really fun read. Louis knew how to tell Westerns, and he told them well. Some of your favorite westerns were either written by him or adapted from one of his stories. He basically invented the genre. What we have in this audiobook is 3 stories written by a master. The first is titled Black Rock. Jim Gatlin, a Texas cowboy, arrives in the town of Tucker, where he finds himself drawn into the middle of a range war. Due to a case of mistaken identity, he kills the segundo of Wing Carey's Flying Sea Ranch. Gatlin is a dead ringer for Jim Walker, who, like Carey, wants control of the XY Ranch. Here is a clip.
"What is this place?" he whispered. "Will they come here?" "It's a law office," she whispered. "I work here part-time, and I left the door open myself. They'll not think of this place." Stealthily, she lifted the bar and dropped it into place. "Better sit down. They'll be searching the streets for some time." He found the desk and seated himself on the corner, well out of line with the windows. He could see only the vaguest outline of her face. His first impression of moments before was strong enough for him to remember she was pretty. The gray eyes were wide and clear, her figure rounded yet slim. "What is this?" he repeated. "What was he gunning for me for?" "It wasn't you. He thought you were Jim Walker of the XY. If you aren't actually him, you look enough like him to be a brother, a twin brother." "Where is he? What goes on here? Who was that hombre who tried to gun me down?" She paused and seemed to be thinking, and he had the idea she was still uncertain whether to believe him or not. "The man you killed was Bill Trout. He was the bad man of Paradise County, and segundo on Wing Carey's Flying Sea spread. Jim Walker called him a thief and a murderer in talking to Carey, and Trout threatened to shoot him on sight. Walker hasn't been seen since, and that was 4 days ago, so everybody believed Walker had skipped the country. Nobody blamed him much." "What's it all about?" Gatlin inquired. "North of here, up beyond Black Rock, is Alder Creek country, with some rich bottom hayland lying in several corners of the mountains. This is dry country, but that Alder Creek area has springs and some small streams flowing down out of the hills. The streams flow into the desert and die there, so the water is good only for the man who controls the range." "And that was Walker?" "No. Up until 3 weeks ago, it was old Dave Butler. Then Dave was thrown from his horse and killed, and when they read his will, he had left the property to be sold at auction and the money to be paid to his nephew and niece back in New York. However, the joke was, he stipulated that Jim Walker was to get the ranch if he could bid $10,000 cash and $40,000 on his note, payable in 6 years. "In other words, he wanted Walker to have the property?" Jim asked. "He got first chance at it." "That's right. And I was to get second chance. If Jim didn't want to make the bid, I could have it for the same price. If neither of us wanted it, the ranch was to go on public auction, and that means that Carey or Horwick would get it. They have the money, and nobody around here could outbid them." The street outside was growing quieter as the excitement of the chase died down. "I think," Lisa continued, "that Uncle Dave wanted Jim to have the property because Jim did so much to develop it. Jim was the foreman of the XY, acting for Dave. Then Uncle Dave knew my father and liked me, and he knew I loved the ranch, so he wanted me to have second chance. But I don't have the money, and they all know it. Jim had some of it, and he could get the rest. I think that was the real issue behind his trouble with Trout. I believe Wing deliberately set Trout to kill him, and Jim's statements about Bill were a result of the pushing around Bill Trout had given him." The pattern was not unfamiliar, and Gatlin could easily appreciate the situation. Water was gold in this country of sparse grass. To a cattleman, such a ranch as Lisa described could be second to none, with plenty of water and grass and good hay meadows. Suddenly she caught his arm. Men were talking outside the door. "Looks like you got plumb away, Wing. Old Ben swears there was nobody in the room with him but that Lisa Cochran, and she never threw that gun. But how Jim Walker ever beat Trout is more'n I can see. Why, Bill was the fastest man around here, unless it's you or me." "That wasn't Walker, Pete. It couldn't have been." "Ben swears it was, and Woody Hammer busted right through the door in front of him. Said it was Jim, all right. Wing Carey's voice was irritable. I tell you, it couldn't have been, he flared. Jim Walker never saw the day he dared face Trout with a gun. I've seen Walker draw, and he never was fast. Maybe he wasn't, Pete Chasen agreed, dryly. But Trout's dead, ain't he?
The other two stories included in this book are just as exciting and told with that Louis Lamar flair. 17-year-old Shandy Gamble in the Gamble of the KT is conned out of $500. He returns to the KD ranch, never mentioning what happened to him. But when he learns the conman is back and hanging out with the June gang, he decides it's time to get his money back and even the score. The last story is titled Sundown Trail, and it is epic. Tom Kendrick has been hired to run off squatters. When he learns that he has been misled by his new bosses and that the squatters are honest and hardworking people, he has to determine which side he's gonna fight for. Louis Lamar is the most decorated author in the history of American letters, and his stories are loved the world over. This book is a tribute to the work he did and is downright enjoyable to listen to. Audible has made it possible for you to have Dead Ringers for free, and if you act this month, you don't even need to use a credit. Here is what Audible has set up for us. They are offering a free audiobook and 30 days to give you the opportunity to check out their service. This includes free access to the Audible Plus catalog, which is updated monthly with new titles. To download your free audiobook today, go to audibletrial.com/Ron's Amazing Stories. Again, that's audibletrial.com/Ron's Amazing Stories, and you can get your free book today. Thank you, Audible. And now, it's time for your stories.
These are your stories, sent by you, for you.
Story for this time was suggested by listener Gary Richardson from Modesto, California. It's not clear who wrote it. In the end, I decided to read it because I can't really know for sure from where it came from, and it's an excellent tale. If you are the copyright holder, which I doubt there is one, then let me know. If you know who may have written this, I'd like to know that as well. The only reference that I could find to the main character of our story is a child that was born in 1891 and died in 1894. Not much help. Anyway, let's get to the story. Texas is a land of many legends. Some of them are just that, legends. They have a germ of truth in them, and some may be entirely true. At one time, when I was a young man, I had the opportunity to hear what some would call a legend from the man who experienced it. Lon Schuler had been a cowboy for as long as anyone could remember. He thought he was born in 1880, but wasn't sure about that. He was sure, however, that the first time he went up the trail with the double-bar cattle drive was in 1892. He said, "I was just a button kid then." He worked as a nighthawk and a wrangler and was told that he could catch up on his sleep next winter. In 1902, on a double-bar drive to Montana, Lon was with the last herd to ever drive on what's known as Stampede Messa. Not many people know about Stampede Messa these days. But from the early 1880s until Texas cattlemen quit driving beef north, Stampede Messa was and may still be one of the most thoroughly hunted places in Texas. Go get a map of the state. One of the highway department maps will do just fine. Look up where the eastern edge of the Panhandle hits the Red River. A little east and south of there, you'll see a lake called Blanco Canyon Reservoir. On the east side of the lake, you'll see a tiny peninsula of land jutting out into the lake. That's Stampede Mesa. It isn't a mesa in the sense of what you see in New Mexico or Arizona. It is a somewhat rocky slope, but with plenty of grass. On the east side is dried-up McNeil Creek. On the west side ran the North Blanco. There is a drop-off there into a draw of anywhere from 6 to 25 feet, and another drop-off on Blanco Canyon of nearly 200 feet at its highest point. These drop-offs were natural fences. A trail boss could throw his herd into the point, put a light guard across the north end, and rest men, horses, and cattle for a couple days with plenty of grass and water. It was a very popular place to hold a herd. Sometime in the early 1800s, a trail boss had some trouble there. A nester, unwanted farmer, had set himself up to the north of the holding point using posts and barbed wire. When a big herd came through, the nester's cows wrecked the wire and joined the herd. Of course, that nester demanded that the trail boss cut them out. The nester was told that the herd would be cut after the men had rested. He got insistent, but ended up looking down the wrong end of a six-shooter. He was told that the boss would cut the herd, and that if he pushed the issue any further, there would be no need to cut the herd. 'Cause dead men don't have no use for cows. The nester left with his drawers in a knot. At midnight he put on a slicker and mounted his mule. He rode south along McNeil Draw until he was about centered on the herd. He then burst out of the brush, flapping the slicker, yelling, and firing his Colt pistol into the air. The result was a stampede. The herd headed west and stampeded straight for the 200-foot drop-off into Blanco Canyon. At least half the herd went over, maybe more. After the cattle were finally milled, the boss began counting cows and cowboys and came up one man short. The man who had been on the west side of the herd had gone over with the cattle. He and his cow pony were both dead. How long it took to catch the nester, nobody seems to have recorded, but catch him they did. There was a debate, but the trail boss, in the end, made the decision. The nester was bound and tied to the saddle on his mule. The mule was then blindfolded and pointed west towards the drop-off. The nester was given a half a minute or so to make his peace, and then the boss laid his six-shooter along the mule's rump and fired. The mule bolted straight for the drop-off, carrying the screaming nester with him. The cowboy was buried beneath a big cottonwood at the north end of the point. The nester? Well, he was left to rot with the cows. That holding point on the North Blanco got an evil reputation. Herds held there invariably stampeded to the west. If you tried to hold the area, you lost animals, and sometimes men. The stampedes were caused by white things that came out of the bush on the east side. Ghosts of cattle and cowboys? Who can say? There were many accounts from the area, but what you are about to hear is what Lon Schuler himself encountered on that last cattle drive to Stampede Mesa. Here is, in his own words, Lon's story. "Yeah, I reckon I was there," Lon said. "Spring of '02 it was. Me and a pal of mine, feller named George Ramp, signed on for a cattle drive going plumb to Montana. Got up on the North Blanco and the boss says, 'We're gonna hold on the point.' Let me tell you, about half the crew drew their pay right then. Me and George, though, we were full of pus and vinegar, and there ain't no spook story that gonna scare us. Them old hands, they told us we was crazy if we stayed, but we done it anyway. Me and George, we drew second watch. That's about from 10 in the evening to about 2 in the morning. We decided to double ride circle, with one of us going around the herd one way, one going the other, so we'd cross twice during each round to see if we'd seen anything peculiar that we could warn each other about. It was right on towards midnight. I was on the east side. That's when things started coming out of the bush. They looked like cows, but they were no cows I ever saw. They was plumb white as milk, and they didn't make no sound at all. And then they didn't even look like they walked. They just sort of floated. Now, I was riding a claybank gelding, one of the steadiest horses I ever had. Never knew that horse to shy from anything afore, but he sure didn't want anything to do with them things. Trouble was, he couldn't get away from 'em. They was everywhere. I hit one with my hand and it just went in. It felt like hitting into cold smoke. That's what it felt like. I hollered real loud, "Look out, George, they're gonna run!" And sure enough, they did. George was on the west side, and he had taken his lariat and commencing to hitting the leaders on their noses, trying to turn 'em. Don't never let nobody tell you that you can turn a herd by shooting in front of them with your gun. All that does is scare 'em worse and make 'em run even faster. Well, the fellows, they wasn't out there with me and George. All they could do was pull their boots on and grab their saddled horses. While we did lose about 100 head, we managed to turn 'em and mill 'em to keep the rest from going over the side. That trail boss, man, he came up to me a-hollerin'. "Damn it, Lon," he said. "It was your holler that started the run. I ought to pull you off that horse and stomp your head in." Now, George, he wasn't a cussin' sort of fella. Oh, he'd say a word now and then, but he wasn't a big cusser. He laid into that trail boss, and I swear he called him everything but a white man. When he got through, he told that feller if Lon hadn't hollered when he did, I'd be down there with them cows. He was up here, you wasn't. That wasn't no low-flying nighthawk or a rabbit or a possum loose in that herd. We seed them things. They were ghost cows. Ghosts. Well, that's just what Lon had to say about Stampede Mesa. It is a pretty incredible story, and I, for one, believe him. Gary Richardson, who you'll remember, told us about this story and had this to say. "Ron, I've been to Stampede Mesa once, a long time ago. Below the drop-off where the cows would have fallen, every kick into the dust brought up cattle bones. The big cottonwood is gone, and whatever markers left for the cowboys who died on Stampede Mesa have rotted away. Over on the McNeil Draw side, there was an ancient, badly rusted pile of barbed wire. Now, I went to Stampede Mesa in the daylight. I can honestly say, I don't think I'd care to go there after dark." Well, Gary, I quite agree with you, and I want to thank you for sharing this story with us. It was a pretty fun tale to read. Our featured story comes from the classic OTR series, Fort Laramie. It aired only 41 episodes in 1956, but the quality is amazing. Why? They were all transcribed, meaning pre-recorded for broadcast. This preserved the quality, and that's why they're so very good. The series was also historically accurate, as if living a Louis L'Amour Western. The sound effects were top-notch and helped tell the story the way it was way back then. Our tale for today is called Stagecoach, and it first aired on April 14th, 1956.
At the gallop! Oh! Fort Laramie. Fort Laramie, starring Raymond Burr as Captain Lee Quince. Specially transcribed tales of the dark and tragic ground of the wild frontier. The saga of fighting men who rode the rim of empire. And the dramatic story of Lee Quince, Captain of Cavalry.
Easy, boy. Feels good, don't it?
You got the whole day, Harrison?
Oh, I'm moving, Sergeant.
Well, that mount will chill and die of pneumonia. You don't rub him brisk and get some elbow grease behind it.
Yes, sir, Sergeant. Why you suppose he does it, Sergeant?
Who does what?
Captain Quince. Up for reveille he was, and off and riding.
Habit, maybe. It was a clean morning, had a feel to it. Riding off alone? I'd like that myself.
There's a touch of spring in there, all right. Buffalo grass as green as can be. I was down at the corral this morning, and even at low water, the old Laramie was rippling along like it had a song in it.
Harrison.
Yes, Sergeant?
You think you could manage to blanket that mount before you write your next poem?
Oh, I guess I'm holding you up.
Captain says he threw a nail. I told him I'd see the farrier got a look at it.
Right forefoot, looks like. I meant to see to it.
I got business at the saddlery anyway.
Sergeant, I'd sure admire some outdoor duty today if you could arrange it.
Stable details, sort of outdoors, Harrison. In and out.
I was thinking more like the hay yard, or lending a hand in the post garden, or like that. I'd be obliged.
Anything outdoors?
Anything at all, Sergeant.
You see up there on the bluff by the old cemetery?
I'm looking that way.
That white patch, top of the rise?
Oh, sure. I see that.
Well, now, that's a patch of wild daisies, Harrison. Anybody asks, you tell them you got my leave to go up there and pick them.
Oh, Sergeant.
It's outdoor work.
I don't aim to get myself laughed right off this post.
It'd be a useful service you was performing, Harrison. Officers are having a fancy ball tonight at Old Bedlam. Well, they might give a stripe or two to the trooper who saw to their decorations.
I tell you, Sergeant, I like this stable detail just fine. More I think of it, more I like it.
Glad to oblige. Any time, Harrison.
Now, getting me 3 stripes someday like it's not, I'll mosey all over the post, too, on a fine spring day.
I could make them daisies in order, Harrison.
Why, look down there, Sergeant Gorse. Ain't that a stage coming over the bridge?
It is. Well, he's riding on a flat wheel.
Yeah, maybe that's why he's pulling into the fort this time of day.
Being the wheelwright so near the smithy and the saddlery, I'll just mosey on down there and see what's going on. Give me that lead rope, soldier.
No, here.
Get to your duty, Daisy.
Oh, yes, Sergeant.
But what do you mean we'll have to put up here for the night? This is an army post. Now, Opie, settle yourself this minute. There's nothing but men here.
Now, ma'am, there ain't a stage built that'll run on 3 wheels.
But an army post? Why, we're women.
Well, be that as it may, we gotta put up here. It took all I had and then some to bring us clean to the fort. Now, the wheelwright tells me he can put us on the trail by sunup, and that's the level best we can do.
I declare, I don't know what. Homer off there in Virginia City Waiting for Opie and me?
Well, you could maybe telegraph ahead if you think your husband will worry after you.
Well, I don't know what to make of you. Of course he'll worry. Homer's bound to worry. His wife and baby girl spending the night in the middle of nowhere at an army post.
Oh, Ma.
Opie, if you Ma me once more, I'll bang you with my umbrella.
Oh, but there's one, Ma, coming right up to us.
One what?
A soldier, Ma.
Oh, Sergeant Gorse.
Stand right behind me, Opie.
Wheelwright says you got trouble, Clay.
Yeah, all kinds, Sergeant. Oh, meet up with Mrs. Kleinhexel. Her daughter, Miss Opie, Sergeant Gorse.
Ma'am? Miss Opie?
Are you in charge here, young man?
No, ma'am. Not exactly.
Then I demand to be taken to whoever is. I want to telegraph Homer. I want to see with my own eyes the quarters for my daughter and me.
Homer, ma'am?
That's Mr. Kleinhexel. He's in Virginia City.
Oh.
Are you listening to me, young man?
Why, yes, ma'am. I do. Clay, where you going?
Well, I'm pretty sure that wheelwright needs a hand. I sure thank you for taking over this way, Sergeant.
Hey, now, Clay,
We've had no food since breakfast, young man. That'll have to be taken care of. Now, those carpet bags over there are ours, and they were brand new when we left Omaha. So, mind you, tend them easy. Who did you say was in charge here?
Well, I didn't say, ma'am, but offhand, I'd say you was.
Opie, simmer down.
And I just wondered if you were in my position, what would you do, Captain?
What?
What would you do?
I'm afraid I haven't been listening, Mr. Syberts. Sorry. What would I do about what?
Would you go alone if you didn't have a young lady to escort? To the officers' ball tonight.
Oh, good Lord, I'd forgotten about that.
It's the first one since I've been here.
If you're smart, you'll get up a poker game. You could play right here in my quarters if you want.
Well, I was rather looking forward to the ball.
I'd sooner ride into an ambush.
You know, it's hard to picture in your mind a ball right here in Old Bedlam. It doesn't seem part of the West somehow.
It shouldn't be part of it. You want a cigar, Syberts?
No, thank you, sir. Captain, you don't talk like you're planning to attend this evening.
I'm not.
You sure?
Mr. Syberts, the last ball I attended was on an order. Besides, I have some work I want to do tonight, if I can get the Major's permission.
Well, I don't know, and it's your business, all right, sir, but she thinks you're going to the ball.
She?
Miss Willa. I was over at the sutler store this morning, and Pliny, Mr. Burgess gave me his leave to ask Miss Willa to the ball.
Well?
But she means to go with you, Captain.
I don't know why. I didn't ask her.
She seems right sure you will, though, before the day's out.
Oh?
She seems content just to wait for you.
Miss Willa's a pretty thing. She makes a mistake, though, waiting for anyone.
Captain, I wouldn't have asked her, but there aren't many single ladies to choose from.
I've got no claim on Miss Willa, Mr. Syberts, if that's what you mean.
No, it's more her claim I was thinking about. She's set on you, Captain Quince.
That's a pure waste. Oh, is it?
Captain Quince, Lieutenant Syberts.
Major Daggett.
Sir.
As you were, gentlemen. This isn't exactly official business.
Yes, sir.
I just looked in the ballroom on the way up. Looks like things are taking shape for tonight.
Yes, sir, they are. Mrs. Daggett and the other wives are doing a fine job with the decorations.
Well, they enjoy that sort of thing. It's time we had some festivity around here.
Yes, sir.
That what you came to tell us, Major?
I expect to see you both there, Captain Quince.
There's something I want to talk to you about, Major.
Both of you there. I don't know whether you've heard yet or not, but we have some guests on the post. Mrs. Kleinhexel from Omaha and her daughter. Their stage broke down. They'll be with us overnight.
The daughter, sir.
What about her, Mr. Syberts?
Well, sir, in the interest of showing Fort Laramie's hospitality, what I mean is, if she's not otherwise engaged, I'd be proud to see her to the ball tonight.
I think that's a good idea, Syberts.
I would like to discuss something, Major.
Yeah, so would I, Captain Quince.
Then if you'll excuse me, Major, Captain.
Mr. Seibert, you'll find the young lady and a mother quartered next to the sutler's store.
Yes, sir.
Well, Lee?
If we can forget that pink tea a while, Major.
I told you, Lee, I expect you at that ball tonight. This is no mere whim of mine, and if I have to order you to be there, I will.
We're not going to see eye to eye on that ever.
You understand all about troop morale in the field. I never knew an officer to show greater concern for his men. But I think you owe something to your fellow officers, Captain.
What do you mean?
There's such a thing as post morale, too. The junior officers admire you, they respect you. It'll mean something to them to see you sharing their off-duty entertainment, relaxation. You're a hard man to know, Lee.
Especially in a ball.
I wouldn't insist if I didn't think it was important.
I've been trying to tell you what I think's important ever since you came in.
All right.
Yellow Horse. He's still in the stockade.
Yes, I know that. But I can't send him to Leavenworth till I receive orders from Washington. So far, they haven't come through.
Can't you telegraph Washington?
In an emergency.
His renegade band of Sioux is still marauding.
Tell me, does this have any connection with the fact that you left the post alone before Reveille this morning?
I rode out to the reservation. Had a long talk with Eagle Wing.
I hope he understood it was unofficial, Captain.
Eagle Wing and I talked only as men interested in peace.
Well, at least he isn't a hostile. And no great friend of Yellow Horse, as I remember.
He says a few of Yellow Horse's old band have come onto the reservation in the last few weeks. That could mean trouble, Major.
A few hostiles on a reservation of 4,000? I don't think so, Captain.
I'm not talking about a Sioux uprising. I'm talking about maybe 6 hostiles thinking to set Yellow Horse free.
Eagle Wing said this?
I say it. It could happen.
Suppose it could. I don't think it's likely.
I do. This band's never had a leader like Yellow Horse. He never killed for gain or because the whites invaded his hunting grounds. He killed to kill because he loved to kill. He's their inspirational leader. They'll come after him.
All right, Lee. What is it you want?
Move Yellow Horse.
Move him?
Yeah, over to Fort Kearney. Small details starting at dusk.
I don't like it, Lee.
He'd be that much closer to Leavenworth.
No, I can't risk it. I'm on orders to secure Yellow Horse at Fort Laramie. I'd need more reason than you give me to go against him.
Then I've said my piece, Major.
Lee, you feel pretty keenly about this. Why?
Maybe it's not important.
I asked you a question.
All right. Call it a symbol. We could have killed him when we took him. But we held something out to the Indians. A fair trial. White man's justice.
Yellow Horse was tried fairly.
And sentenced fairly. The Indians know that. Yellow Horse should pay for his killing. Legally. If an escape is arranged, even if he's killed in the attempt, he's a martyr to every red man because a white man killed him.
Sure, I don't disagree with any of that, Lee.
But your answer's still the same.
It has to be. My orders are clear. I have to respect them. I wish I could count on your understanding.
I wish I could give it to you, Major.
All right, Captain. We both had our say. Now let's forget it. I'd like you to join my party this evening.
That an invitation, sir?
That is an order, Captain.
Yes, sir.
Well, I wouldn't have believed it. It's a regular store.
Yes.
I declare, Mr. Burgess, it's the equal of anything we have in Omaha.
Oh, yes, it is. Chicago, New York, Boston. Yeah. Pliny Burgess bows to no one when it comes to merchandise.
Now, this bolt of cloth. Ophi, just look at the quality.
Those threads. Pure gold, madam. Pure gold.
Why, there's no such thing.
Well, in color, I mean. Yes, pure gold.
Oh, well, yes. I see they are. Oh, Fee, will you stop clutching me so?
Look, Ma. Oh, it's another one.
Oh, my. Well, he's just another soldier, Opie. You'd best get used to the sight of them. They're all over out here.
Afternoon to you, Captain Quince.
Miss Willow around, Pliny?
To the back, with the account books as usual, Captain.
Thank you.
My sakes, he's a big one.
Yeah, oh, yes, he is.
Now, Opie, you stop making eyes this minute. You've been spoke for by that other one, and he's a lieutenant.
Lovely girl. Shy, but she's a lovely girl.
Miss Willow.
Well, yes.
Hello, Lee.
Hello.
Well, come on in.
If you're busy, why, we can forget about it.
No, you'll not get off that easy. I'm not busy, and I've been expecting you.
You shouldn't wait for me, Willa. You know that.
Sit down, Lee.
Thanks.
I don't wait for you. As you say, I know better than that. I wait for Major Daggett.
How's that?
Sooner or later, he always orders you to attend the ball. And when he does, sooner or later, you decide you'd rather escort me than dance with ranking officers' wives the entire evening.
That the way it is?
I'm afraid so. But that's not a complaint. I'll be ready at 8.
All right.
Don't look so trapped, Lee. You're not, you know.
I wasn't thinking about me.
Don't worry about me. I understand. It's a lovely day. It'll be a lovely evening, Lee.
Yeah. It looks like Mr. Syberts is going to have a lovely evening, too.
Oh, poor Opie.
Poor Syberts. You could have spared him that if you'd accepted him instead of waiting around for...
For Major Daggett.
Yeah. Yeah, for Major Daggett.
Good heavens, what...
Get him out of here! Sandwiches! It's not safe! Sandwiches!
Madam, please.
Get him out!
You're perfectly safe, madam.
Me no do nothing. Walk in store, do nothing.
We'll be killed! We'll all be killed!
What's wrong out here?
Oh, got an awful fright! Get him out of here!
Hey, take the girl, Willis.
Come along, Opie. It's all right.
Yes, tell her it's all right, Captain. It's the engine. She's not used to the sight of them.
Captain, white woman, bad spirit.
No white bird. She's just frightened.
White bird frightened, too. Him do nothing.
He walked in here. Big as life. That's what he did. Right in the store, mind you, like he was a
Human being?
Yes. Like he was a human being.
Is that all he did?
Well, yes. But if I hadn't cried the alarm, we'd have all been massacred. That's what they do, you know.
White bird go. Come later to trade.
Well, now, you bring silver and more blankets, Whitebird?
Trade for food. Come back later when bad spirit and white woman go.
Well, I never. You people dealing with him, trading like he was a...
He's a reservation Indian, ma'am. He's all right.
Oh, yes. I would like to look at what he has to offer, Captain.
Well, go on into the storeroom. Make your trades.
Yes, sir.
Go on. It's all right, Whitebird.
Why, of course. Come on, Whitebird. Come on.
And see you trade him fair, Pliny.
Oh, I'm the soul of honor, Captain.
Yeah. You, feel better, ma'am?
You've done nothing to make me feel better. I see you're mighty solicitous about your savage in there. But not so much as a kind word for a frightened white woman.
Sorry, ma'am. We know Whitebird. He's our friend. We've lived with him. But we've no mind to be unkind to strangers.
You mean to say that Indians have the run of this fort, young man?
Some Indians, the ones we know and trust. Ones who trust us. You'll find that in the West.
But what about all the killing? The massacres, that's all you hear in Omaha and near all you read. How many whites the red savages have murdered. Now I say that's true or it isn't.
Some of it is, ma'am. Indians are like us. There's good and bad. We've got a bad one on the post, Yellow Horse. But he's in the stockade.
That's as it should be. You think that, don't you?
I think that.
Well, it's a pity you can't tell by looking.
Oh, you can sometimes if you know what to look for. But that comes with knowing folks. White men or red men.
At face value. It's a risky business, young man. Many's the time I've been dead wrong in judging a body, on first sight, I mean. Of course, I'm talking about white folks.
You planning to live in the West, ma'am?
Virginia City. Homer's out there now. Opie and me are going to him. Sakes, I guess I got a lot of learning ahead of me. A lot of learning.
Sergeant? Over here, Sergeant.
Oh, yes, sir. Captain?
Finished eating, Gores?
Yes, sir. Ate plenty, too. Good thing I got no bars on my shoulders. I'd be right too stuffed to waltz tonight.
That so?
Fine spring evening for a flock of fancy waltzes, though.
All right, Sergeant, you're making your point.
Yes, sir.
You, got any plans for tonight after tattoo?
Oh, I drew some duty, Captain.
Duty?
Kind of special duty, too. Orders come down from Major Daggett to double the guard at the stockade. Well, I figured you'd know that.
No. No, I didn't.
Ain't they sending Yellow Horse on to Leavenworth before long?
That's up to Washington.
Yeah. Sure got a lot of time back there, ain't they, Captain?
Seems like it. Sometimes.
Did you have something you wanted me to do tonight?
No. No, nothing.
Well, before I told you about the duty, you asked about my plans, Captain.
You answered my questions.
Yes, sir.
That's all, Sergeant.
If anything comes up at the stockade, I'll see you hear about it, sir.
You'll report to Major Daggett.
Yes, sir.
Good night, Gores.
Captain?
Yeah?
It's a right smart sash you're wearing.
Good night, Gores.
Yes, sir.
She's been trying to get your attention for the last half hour, Lee.
Who has?
Mrs. Kleinhexel, and you haven't even asked her to dance yet either.
I know, but I...
Shh, here she comes.
Excuse me, you two, but I've got to have word to this young man. I'm sending the lieutenant to dance with you, dearie.
Captain Quince was just on his way over to you, Mrs. Kleinhexel. I'll find Lieutenant Syberts.
Well, shall we, Captain?
Proud to, ma'am.
I could waltz with a glass of water on my head and never spill a drop. That's what Homer always says.
You try it with me, ma'am. You stand a chance of drowning.
There's good humor in you, young man. I like that.
Thank you.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
I wanted to tell you, I went out on the veranda for a breath of air a while back. And when I first saw them, I came near to screaming like I did this afternoon with the other Indian.
You're developing a real eye for Indians, ma'am.
Yes, I am. I've been trying to recollect, though. I don't believe he was wearing them in the store today.
White bird? Wearing what?
The feathers.
No, ma'am, he wasn't wearing feathers.
I didn't think so. Now, these Indians was. Well, maybe it suits their fancy.
You're sure they were wearing feathers?
I just told you. There was 5 or 6, I guess.
Excuse me,
And-
ma'am. I have to speak to the major.
Now, what's wrong with feathers?
Major Daggett, sir! Where are those shots coming from, Captain?
That's a stockade, Major. Seiberts! Lawson! Let's go! 6 of them. All dead, Sergeant?
Dead Injuns, Captain. Good thing you doubled the guard, Major.
What about Yellow Horse?
Oh, he was whooping for a while. But I checked him. He's got his health, all of it.
Captain.
Yes, sir?
Fall in a detail. I want Yellow Horse on his way to Leavenworth no later than noon tomorrow. Any questions?
Just one, sir. What about Washington?
I'll telegraph Washington tonight. Oh, Captain.
Yes, Major.
Thank you.
So what was it really like on an army fort in the 1870s? When Norman Macdonald created Fort Laramie in late 1955, he told his writers that historical accuracy was essential to the integrity of the series. Correct geographic names, authentic Indian practices, and military terminology were all standard. Also, using the actual names of the original buildings in Fort Laramie was insisted upon. So, like in today's story, when the characters referred to Sutler's store, well, that was the actual name of the trading post in the original fort. How about that?
Use Ajax, the foaming cleanser. Clean pots and pans, just like a whiz.
Ajax cuts grease faster than any other leading cleanser.
Use the pain, the elbow tax, when you start cleaning with Ajax.
Ajax really polishes as it cleans.
So use Ajax, the foaming cleanser. Float the dirt right down the drain.
My gosh, they're right. Foaming action Ajax makes even the dirtiest pan shine like new in a jiffy.
So use Ajax.
That was episode number 465. Don't forget to get your entries in by Sunday for the Halloween contest and let me know if you want to be part of These Are Your Stories test shows. If you want to follow the podcast or the blog, head to ronsamazingstories.com. There you will find any of the links I mentioned and how to contact us. Do you want to help the show? The best thing you can do is to tell your friends all about it, and please leave reviews or feedback wherever you listen. Clicking that follow or like button makes us grow. Thank you for listening, and I hope you come again to find out what are Ron's Amazing Stories.
All of the vintage audio used in the podcast is believed to be in the public domain. Ron's Amazing Stories does not own the rights to any of the old-time radio used here. If you hold the rights to any of the shows played, please contact us immediately at ronsamazingstories.com.